Okay, I think we can start now. Welcome everybody to this EENA webinar about eCall. We have three presentations, two about the current status of eCall in Ireland and Lithuania. We have as a presenter Ciaran Moynihan from BT Ireland, and also Tadas Maroščikas from 112 Lithuania. And we will speak also about the future of eCall, and we count with Andy Rooke, who will present the SAFE project. So I will share now the presentation from Tada. Well, from yes, we can start with Tadas, and once you will have it on the screen, I will give the floor to him so he can start. I hope you can see the slides. Tadas, can you see the slides?
Yes, I see the slide.
Oh. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Hello all. Pleasure to meet you virtually and to provide a short overview on eCall implementation and maybe eCall functioning, better to say, in Lithuania. This first picture or entry picture of my slide is like a screenshot from eCall, which has been made from Belarus, but reached our 112 center in Vilnius. As you may see, the distance from the border is 16 kilometers. So our network, national network, potentially covers this territory from the tower that is nearby the border. And the problem is that most of those eCalls that are not really eCalls from real EU-based eCall, but from the Russian eCall, which is called ERA-GLONASS. Most often those calls come from the IVS that has not SIM cards in them. Next slide, please. So to introduce me, I work for 16 years in the Emergency Response Center in Vilnius, and our organization is responsible for universal call taking for all emergencies and also for fire dispatching. We don't have police or medical dispatchers. They are employees of other organizations, our partners in daily operation. So next slide. In Lithuania, two PSAPs in Vilnius and Klaipėda on the western coast are responsible for emergency, both for 112 calls and eCalls. So it's the same routing. All the green area on the map, you can see all those calls, eCalls and 112 calls are routed to the PSAP on the left in Klaipėda city, and red territory, all the calls from the red territory are routed, and also eCalls are routed to the Vilnius PSAP where I'm. So it's we have in both centers, in both PSAPs, we have direct connections with all mobile operators as well as with telecom or main landline operator. So next slide, please. So basically, in emergency call handling model is that we handle not only 112, but we also handle emergency calls to our old police and fire numbers. We also have 112 SMS service available. We also handle 116000 missing children number. we are now in process of developing 112 app for video calls and chat calls for the deaf. And as you see in the below, old medical numbers 03, 103, and 033, they are still routed directly to the medical PSAPs. Next slide. So we, in each of center, we have 4 decoders. So, I mean, 2 decoders, but each decoder consists of 2 decoders, so it is backed up. And we can have up to 8 simultaneous MSDs per time. It is integrated into our CAD, so the information that is decoded is provided onto the screen on the individual equal incident card, so our operator can see all the information relevant to this particular call. Also, we have an integration with EUCARIS and National Car Register. So right after the signal is received, the call is received and the information is decoded, VIN request is sent to the both National Car Register and also to EUCARIS. Okay, next slide. Equal routing from MNOs is just the same way, like as I said before. It is done same way like we handle emergency calls to 112. So we don't have any dedicated call center for equal. Just we receive it, and operators, MNOs, they recognize equal as equal, and they route it to different to different endpoint, which is on our end, and we know that this call should be routed to the decoder where it is decoded, and then all information is sent to the CAD, and call is returned to the equal call taker. Okay, next slide. So basically, it's a specific incident card, and the one section that is named equal. So it is in Lithuanian language, but you can understand from some words that it is vehicle information. Also, as you may see, license plate, color, BMW, the maker and model, and passenger's number, and the yellow field is gasoline or type of fuel, and so on. Next slide. This is how it looks like on the map. As you know, eCall delivers the position and 2 previous positions, so we can know the direction of the car which was car directing to. Next. So this is the same picture, same copy about the call from Belarus, and it was not the only call from Belarus, but just I think it is more felt here in the eastern part of Europe, because most of those calls they are coming from another country, from another countries, because normally no one buys Russian cars here in Lithuania. So this is an issue. Next slide. So numbers and issues shortly. We have received since September 2018, a year ago, about 700 eCalls. Most of them are manual activations. Also, some of them manual car shop demonstrations, where the seller of the car, Lexus especially, they demonstrate the car, and normally once per month we receive the call from the Lexus saloon salon just say that it was accidentally pushed, but we see that it is quite repetitive, and I think we could report them to the police. And also curiosity calls, which is the same. Mostly like owners, it's more like owners that acquired car and they try pushing every single button in their car to learn about it more. Normally, calls from IBS from no SIM card should not be possible. It is in European standards, not in European, but in the eCall standards. But as I mentioned before, probably from ELA GLONASS, it is not the requirement. So it is not a requirement. So that's why we receive eCalls, and still it is based on 112. So we receive those calls, and also most often people say that the passengers or driver in the vehicle that it was not accident, just manual push. We also have some calls from prefixes 882 and 883, and unfortunately, call back so far it's not possible from our side, but it is not because of our PBX. We have a transit through the Ministry of the Interior, and they don't provide this number yet to call. But from my mobile call, I can call, and the cost is around €5, including VAT. Next slide. TPSPs, we have one agreement with TPSP, a third-party service provider for eCall, and namely they are Bosch and TPS and OnStar. We don't have a data interface with them, so this is a problem, because when the car collides, the call and data is delivered to their center somewhere in another country. So they call us via long number and tell us coordinates and location and what is happening verbally. So it takes 15 minutes instead of 15 seconds. If it could have been, the car would call 112 directly. And our idea is that TPS should use the same mechanism as 112 equal. So probably what I mean is, like, the car could call 112 first, report the location, and after the contact is to 112 is ended, the car can, in addition, call TPSP call center to report all the others things like assistance or integration with our CAD is possible, but we cannot pay again for our end, even for integration of our end, because it's we already paid for 112 based equal. So in case our approach is, like, if they want to connect, they should cover all the cost of the integration also for our end, but no TPSPs want to pay. And probably the next slide. That was quick overview. Maybe you have any questions. Thank you. Try to make it very quick.
Thank you, Tadas. And I open the floor for questions. I don't know if you have something to share. I see here on the chat, Björn says the situation as you described, it is almost the same as in Sweden. Low number of real equals, no integration with TPSP, and therefore long handling time, etc. Thank you, Björn, for sharing the experience in Sweden with all of us. So yes?
We can include Björn Skoglund as a speaker also. co-speaker with me.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Hi, Tadas and Christina. Yeah, I mean, what you are saying are almost a blue copy of what we have in Sweden. We have lots of calls. I'm looking for the number right now, which I've included in the COCOM report. I can remember that we have had 79 automatic e-calls, and only 10 of them were real e-calls, a real accident of some kind. Many of them are from developers of cars. We have, as you know, Volvo in Sweden. Well, it's a Chinese company nowadays, but they still have lots of fabrics and things in Sweden. And we also have test courses up in the north of Sweden with many car manufacturers. So I think a lot of these automatic are from car manufacturers.
Yes, this is false calls. I think it's the main problem, and also what almost all the countries are sharing right now on eCall, that they receive many false e-calls, and perhaps it's also a matter of education. I don't know. I have here also a question from Iratze. Is the ERA GLONASS specification very different from the European eCall standard?
From what I know, they copied European standards, but they maybe made their own adjustments. So they are not 100% identical, but probably they are. I mean, they do not require a SIM card to be present in the IVS. So that's what I know, but I never consulted those standards myself. So,
Christina,
Sorry,
it's Ciaran.
Yes.
And you were coming in there as well, were you?
Yeah, the GLONASS standards are virtually identical in looking at the IVS and how it was set up, because they without quite blatantly borrowed ours first, but its operation is different, is much different, and they also have great difficulty dealing with our MSD as well, because they're still on MSD version 1, we're on MSD version 2, but essentially you're looking at the same piece of equipment, with the big difference that it only will work on 3G, not 2G.
Okay. I had a question for Tadas. It's Ciaran here as well, and again, it's on the ERA GLONASS calls where you're not receiving a CLI. I think you said you believe that those devices, those ERA GLONASS devices, don't have a SIM card, or well, there isn't a requirement for them to have a SIM card. Are calls in a limited service state allowed in Lithuania? So. Yes. Yeah, because in Ireland, calls in a limited service state with a SIM card or without a SIM card are allowed, and we get a great number of calls from regular mobile phones which don't contain a CLI. And we know those calls are calls that were made in a limited service state and not calls that were made from a mobile device without a SIM card. Yeah. We have seen this for eCall as well, but in much smaller numbers. So is it possible, or is there a possibility that some of these ERA GLONASS devices may have a SIM card, but they don't have the capability to roam onto, or they're not allowed to roam onto the Lithuanian mobile network? That they're a local SIM card only?
Might be so, I don't know honestly, but what I'm sure about, that they catch the coverage of our national network.
Yeah.
Penetrate deep into the territory of Belarus, for example, because probably, business. I mean, you've seen there was a distance of 16 kilometers from the call from the car. So MSD is probably the same format, because we can decode it and put on the map. So that means like MSD is very similar, at least identical.
Yeah, it may be worth. it may be worth checking with the mobile network operator to see if there was an IMEI or an IMSI from that device that wasn't allowed to register. It's possible that it wasn't allowed to register.
Well, we are in cooperation. Maybe we will do that.
But yeah, 16 kilometers is not unusual in Ireland either.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a last question from Marek. How do you treat e-calls received from Belarus or Russia?
Thanks for the question. Normally, there was never received a real e-call from the Belarus or Russia where the real accident was happened. So, but in case we received normal 112 calls from there, so we recommend them to connect to their own network and to call, because we don't know contacts from differently from Latvia and Poland, where we know where we have contacts, also through the PSAP directory, which is managed by European Communications Office now. But in case of call coming from Russia and Belarus, we recommend to connect to their own network and to call there again.
Okay.
Did I answer?
Thanks. I think you have answered. Thank you, Tadas.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tadas, and we will jump now to Ireland. And
thanks very much.
Thank you, and I will share now Ciaran presentation, and as soon as you can see the slide, you can start the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, and good afternoon, everyone. We'll move along quickly enough, so if you want to just pop onto the first slide there, I'll give you a very brief background on myself and the ECAS service. I have been with the ECAS service for the past 9 or 10 years. It's so long I can't remember. But ECAS stands for the Emergency Call Answering Service, originally enough, and it is the Stage 1 PSAP for Ireland. We answer all emergency calls and SMS in the Republic of Ireland and connect as required to the Stage 2 services, police, ambulance, fire and Coast Guard. We don't have any responsibility for responding or dispatching assistance. That's the responsibility of the Stage 2 services. So the ECAS service is responsible only for filtering, and we do a lot of filtering, and routing of the emergency calls to the requested service. We handle approximately 2 million calls per annum at this stage. That's up from a low of about 1.6, 1.7 million in 2013. It's been increasing steadily for the past number of years, so we're on target for over 2 million calls this year, and that's serving a population of 4.9 million people. So some background on our platform. We operate a single queue call handling platform from 2 geographically diverse and fully redundant data centers. So every emergency call in the country is going to be routed to one of these 2 data centers, and it's load balanced and distributed between the 2 data centers. So regardless of which data center the call is connected to, it's still placed in a single queue, which is handled by or serviced by all of the operators that are located in 2 separate operator centers. These are our permanently live operator centers. We do have additional sort of fallback or backup operator centers that can be used in the event of evacuation as well. So we have a single call handling platform for all communications, and that allowed us to essentially bolt on ECAS onto that call handling platform. I mean, it sounds simple, but it wasn't as simple as that. But how we did it was we chose to use we worked with our call handling platform supplier, our software supplier, and between us we chose to use the Gradient eCall servers. We have 2 of those, 1 in each data center. Each eCall server can handle 30 simultaneous eCalls, so decoding simultaneous eCalls. Now, they can actually handle more. They're actually a SIP device, so there's no TDM involved in the actual eCall server. They're fully integrated with our platform using SIP, XML, and database integration. So eCall has been implemented as a fully integrated channel into our call handling platform. So that means that there's full data integration with our backend data systems, full integration using SIP on our telephony side, and we redeveloped our call handling client to display the eCall information to the operators in the same way as any other call information is displayed to them. That's basically, an eCall to us is the same as any other emergency call. And Ireland chose to participate in the iHero project, and we carried out conformance testing for iHero in December 2017. We went live with eCall in late September 2017. We were pretty much just in time for the deadline in October. So yeah, people were relatively relieved that we weren't in breach of any directives there. So next slide, please, Christina. So as I said, we went live in 2017. What's our experience been? Our experience has been similar to, I believe, every other country. Low call volumes would be the headline there. I'm not sure what we were expecting, but initially, in the first few months of 2018, eCall volumes were in the region of approximately 4 or 5 calls per month. So at those volumes, it's very, very difficult to get any sort of an idea of what the trend or, you know, normal behavior is for handling one of these calls. Low call volumes is also a significant challenge for our call takers. So as I mentioned, we handle approximately 2 million calls per month, or sorry, per year. That's roughly 170,000 calls per month. Now, with a total number of call takers in the region of 60 to 65, that's approximately 2,800 calls per call taker per month. But they may only get 1 eCall or perhaps no eCall in an entire month of call taking. That means that our operators have no practice handling eCalls, and that can, you know, it can make it a difficult or an unusual call type for them to handle when they do get one of those. So that's something we've really had to bear in mind. We have noticed an increase in the last 2 months in eCall activity, and I'm not quite sure what that's down to yet. I believe it may be one manufacturer in particular, but we have seen, if you look at the figures there, our total number of eCalls was around about the 30 to 40 per month up until September, when it jumped to 92 calls per month. And so far in October, we're up to 44, and we're not even halfway through October yet. So there has been an increase in the last 2 months, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of why that is. My current suspicion is it's down to one manufacturer who may have retrofitted or turned on pan-European eCall where they were previously using TPSP eCall. In terms of the automatic versus manual activations, we're not getting a lot of automatic activations. I think automatic activations are probably the type of call that most emergency services will be interested in, because an automatic activation almost certainly means a collision. Manual activations, we are seeing lots of misdials, similar to other countries. We get a variety of reasons for the misdial. Some of them can be very, very entertaining. Other ones can be the users of the vehicle are attempting to contact their car manufacturer with a question about their car. Other examples are people are trying to make music come on their radio. So they press the big red button. You might ask why, but they do. So yeah, we get quite a number of misdials. Some of the misdials are actually connected to the stage 2 services. If our operator has reason to believe that there may be assistance required, but the occupants of the car are not saying anything, are not communicating with our call taker, they may refer the call to either the police or the ambulance as the situation dictates. But in general, the vast majority of misdials are, oh, I just wondered what this button did. And we do see those increase significantly in January and July, which coincides with the new car registrations. New car registrations in Ireland are typically in January and July, because that's when the new registration plates are updated and everyone wants the latest registration plate. So if you're buying a new car, you're going to wait until July or January to do it. And typically about 2 weeks after January and July, we do see a kind of a small spike in misdials and curiosity dials, we'll call them. So I think Tadas was talking about the numbers. We have sort of a similar experience. We are getting the majority of the calls from 0088239, which is the international M2M range, which I believe is assigned to Vodafone Malta. We've seen a handful, and it's a very small number, of calls from Austrian SIMs, and also a very small number of calls from French SIMs. We haven't had any issues calling back these 17-digit numbers. When the issue was first identified, we obviously checked our platform and found there was no limitations there. And we also checked with our upstream service providers, which is BT in Ireland and Air, and neither of those had any limitations on the number length for a number that we could call. So we were fairly confident that we wouldn't have any issues calling those numbers, but we did take part in the tests that were put forward as part of the CEPT survey in April of this year, and we were successfully able to call the test numbers there. The other question that was asked in that survey was, what was the cost of the call? And I think Tadas already identified that they're seeing a relatively high cost when calling from a mobile. Unfortunately, I'm not actually able to tell you what the cost of those test calls were, because we never received a bill for it, because it would appear that being such an unusual number, our service provider hasn't included that number range for rating, so they haven't charged us yet. So I'm not going to complain too loudly about not being charged for a call. So as soon as I do hear from them and they do charge us, I'll let CEPT know. Yeah, the other issue that was identified, I think, early in the eCall deployment was this issue of fake eCalls. This was identified, I think, by Portugal originally, and I believe EENA did quite a bit of work on this one, where it was identified that when Portugal turned on eCall routing, and it was observed in other countries as well, when the mobile networks turned on routing, specific routing for eCalls, it was identified that certain calls were coming through identified as eCalls, which were actually from mobile handsets and not from IVS devices. So this was examined in detail at the time, and it was identified that this was as a result of these sort of rogue or grey market devices setting the emergency call flags incorrectly. and the recommendation at the time was to implement filtering at the mobile network such that only a call would only be routed as an eCall if the single correct eCall flag was set. If any other flags were set, it should be routed as a normal emergency call. So in Ireland, the mobile networks perform this filtering, and they route eCalls to the ECAS using the routing numbers 991 for manual and 992 for an automatic eCall. Anything else is routed to the ECAS using the emergency numbers either 112 or 999. So that filtering was implemented, and it was done around about December and January 2017, 2018. And since then, we haven't received any fake eCalls. We did receive one on one network prior to that change being made. Having said that, when this issue was identified, there was a great deal of concern in Ireland that if this filtering failed or didn't work, that genuine callers could be connected in error to our eCall servers. And this would result in them hearing 20 seconds of modem tones before the eCall server gave up and connected the call to a call handling agent. So because of the concerns that were there at the time, we configured our eCall servers to operate in push mode as defined by the standards, which they can do both, which meant that they would wait for the IVS system to send a start signal. And if they hadn't received a start signal in, I think it was 7 seconds, then they would, the eCall servers would give up and continue presenting the call to a normal emergency call taker. That would mean that if a genuine caller made a call from one of these gray devices, that the worst case would be that they would just hear 7 seconds of silence before being connected to an emergency call taker. That was the thinking at the time. However, in looking at the data over the past year, we identified that we haven't seen any of these fake eCalls come true. We've also noticed, and this is where it becomes difficult because of the low volume of eCalls, it's difficult to identify a trend or indeed anything of statistical significance. But it did look like we had a relatively high number of calls where the MSD transmission either didn't take place or failed. And as a result of that, we made the decision some months back to reconfigure our servers to operate in pull mode, in which case they would actually send the start signal. Since we've done that, the number of eCalls where the MSD transmission failed or wasn't attempted has dramatically fallen down to a handful, maybe 3-4 calls per month where MSD transmission is not attempted. And we believe they're down to poor mobile network coverage or a poor signal. So in actually handling eCalls was another challenge we actually faced. As I mentioned, eCall is completely new to everyone, or was completely new to everyone. And developing the procedures and the call taker's guide for what they do when they receive an eCall is something that we put quite a bit of thought into. And one of the things we identified, and it has really been shown to be true, is that in an automatic activation, in the event of a collision, the occupants of the vehicle are often not aware that their vehicle has actually made an emergency call. So this is something we learned from listening to the recordings of eCalls, and we listened to quite a few recordings of eCalls, that The car makes the call automatically, and after 20 seconds, it's connected to our emergency call taker. And our emergency call taker is saying, emergency, which service? Or this is the emergency operator, which service do you require? And this can often be either ignored or be quite confusing for the occupants of the vehicle. So it's actually something we're looking at, is to try and improve that interaction with the occupants of the car, because this can be a very confusing time for them. One of the other considerations is that, again related to automatic eCalls, if nobody responds to our operator. So I have heard calls where all you hear from the vehicle in the first 10 seconds could be somebody groaning. Now, they're difficult calls to listen to. Thankfully, in those cases, the person was only groaning because they'd actually crashed their car. They weren't injured. They didn't need assistance. They were groaning because they'd crashed their car and they're upset about it. But these are the type of calls you need to listen to and plan for. So we had to develop a policy for what do we do in the event that we receive an automatic eCall and there is no response from the occupants of the vehicle, and they don't request a service or they don't tell us that they're okay. And our policy that we developed for those situations is that we automatically connect that call to the ambulance service. The ambulance service are a stage 2 emergency service. They have call takers that are trained to triage an emergency situation, and they have the capability to respond and dispatch assistance. If we don't know that everything is well in the vehicle, and if we know there has been a collision, we automatically connect that call to the ambulance service. But there's been lots of other sort of considerations and minor adjustments to our call taking scripts and policies that we've had to put in as we learn more and more about eCall. And this is the thing, we're learning more about it each day. And finally, VIN database. Tadas showed us some very nice information there, where he's actually able to show us the make and model of a vehicle. That is optional information under the eCall standards, the use of a VIN decoder or a VIN database. And it's actually something that has proved quite challenging in Ireland. ECAS is a private sector service which is run under a license from government or from the ministry. As a result, we don't have access to the same type of information that many ministries may have on vehicles. And we're trying to work with the various ministries to get access to that information, because we do see that it would be valuable information to the emergency services. It's useful for them to realize that, oh, yes, this is a blue BMW with a registration plate that starts in 2016. That's useful information for them. But we don't have that at the moment, and we're working on getting that. What we did find is that the first 3 digits of the VIN, which is the WMI, is very, very useful in that it helps to identify manufacturer, or it does identify the manufacturer, and that can give us some very useful statistics when we're trying to work with the car manufacturers. So next slide, please. And I think I might need to pick up the pace looking at the time here. Oh, I think you might have skipped one there, did you? Can we back up one? There we go. Yeah, so what have we learned so far? And we are still learning. We're learning every day about eCall. Close engagement with the mobile network operators. It's not something we're good at, but we are getting better at it as a result of eCall. It was really, really important that the network operators understood what they had to do. And it's fair to say that initially they didn't understand what they needed to do, or indeed that there was a regulatory obligation upon them placed by the eCall regulations. So that was actually difficult initially. In the end, they did get it, they came on board and they worked well with us, but it did make the original rollout of eCall a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. As I said, we're learning every day about eCall. Every eCall we listen to tells us a little bit more about it, how it works. And as the volumes increase, we are learning more and more. But it's fair to say we didn't know what the experience would be until it went live. Yeah, we talked a lot about it. We read, we discussed with everyone, but until it actually goes live and you start to get these calls, it's very difficult to understand what the experience, the call taking experience is going to be like. The low call volumes is still an issue in that it's difficult to identify, as I said, it's difficult to identify trends and normal behavior. But something we've observed in the past, we observed this also with SMS, is that when you have low call volumes, you could have a problem and it takes longer for that problem to be identified. So you could have a system fault. If you had a system fault with your voice call taking system or with your voice calls coming into your platform, you'd immediately know about that because you'd look around the operator centers and they're all sitting there doing nothing. If it goes quiet in an emergency operator center or a PSAP center, it's usually because something's broken. But with the low call volumes associated with eCall, it's possible that something could be broken and you may not know about it for quite some time. As a result, we've had to implement a regular testing schedule. So we actually test eCall operation end to end using IVS simulators at least daily and sometimes more often. So we have IVS simulator devices. They've been absolutely invaluable to us in setting up and also training our operators to handle eCalls. And indeed, the test calls do help to give our operators a little bit more practice than they would normally have. Those figures that I showed you on the previous slide, those were the figures for live eCalls, and they didn't include the test calls. We do find that we need to monitor the operation closely, given the call volumes are so low. So we do regularly review the stats and listen to the call recordings. That helps us to see, how are our operators handling the calls? Is everything working as it should be? And that sort of action did help us to identify the rise in these no modem calls, we call them. They were the calls where MSD transmission didn't occur. And finally, the motor industry. I don't know if other countries have had a similar experience. I think Tadas mentioned they have worked with Volvo. We've also worked with Volvo. We found that Volvo are one of the sort of more engaged or helpful manufacturers. They seem to be committed to ensuring their eCall service works across Europe. So they've done some testing in Ireland. A small number of other car manufacturers have done some testing also in Ireland. And when we get the opportunity to work with the manufacturers, we find that very productive. You're talking to technical people who know what they're talking about, understand how it should work, and they're very, very appreciative of the assistance that the PSAP provides them. And we're delighted to help them if we can, because it helps us to learn more about the eCall implementation in multiple vehicles. I have had some sort of collaboration or contact with the motor industry in Ireland through the Distributors network. And I think I have to say, Tadas, you mentioned Lexus and test calls. Yeah, the distributors and dealers, they don't appear to be very well informed about how eCall works, what it should do, and most particularly what the customer, what the owner of the car needs to know about eCall. So that has proved to be a little bit of a problem for us. And I'm just, yeah, I'd raise the point that a forum or a process for collaboration with the motor industry, I think we have a service here which works across two industries, three industries if you like. So it's the PSAP industry, it's the emergency services, and it's telecommunications, and it's the motor industry. And I think, you know, collaboration between those industries, it needs a little work. So if there was any sort of forum that could bring those groups together, I think that would be a very useful thing to do. So that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, finally, if anyone wants to see a very quick shot on the next slide, this is what an eCall presentation looks like on our client. You can see our telephony information up there on the top. Down along the left-hand side, we have the MSD information with the map and position to the right. Now, anyone who's looking closely will spot that this is most obviously a test call from one of the simulator devices. It was done early in the implementation, but you will spot there are not too many motorcycles that have 25 passengers. So that's what it looks like on our side. We've tried to keep it as simple as possible for our operators, but still present them with the information as clearly as possible. So that's it, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We are running a little bit out of time. It was very interesting. I think we will jump to the next presentation, and then I will give the opportunity to make some questions. I know Andy has a limited time, so I will jump quickly to his presentation. Andy, you can start when you want.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Christina. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about Project Safe. And could I have the next slide, please, Christina? There we go. This is what I'm going to talk about. Why have we got Project Safe? What it is, what we want to achieve, what actually we're doing over the next, we've got about another 14 months left to go, who's involved, and some idea of the partners we have in this. So next slide, please. Okay, so the foundation for everything to do with Project Safe has come from iHero, and it was really nice to listen to Ciaran describing some of the activities that we went through and how Ireland managed to prepare using the iHero vehicle. So some other things that we did during iHero is that we started work on NextGeneration Equal, and we started to develop some standards for the in-vehicle system and for the PSAP. And I know that this is an area that EENA have great interest in, and the European Commission, in funding the SAFE project, wanted us specifically to look at this. Also, during iHero, we made some significant movement on eCall for powered two-wheel vehicles, and also eCall for trucks. And it was great to see actual, real, tangible products coming out of iHero, both for powered two-wheel, and if at some stage we can put the video up that came from that, where it's tested in the Bosch testing ground. And I'm sure some of you actually saw the trucks that were the truck as we had running through Europe and all the way up to the Czech Republic. So SAFE as a project is all about eCall, as it says here, for a whole bunch of vehicles. In fact, If it's got a wheel on it, even if it's got a track on it, we are developing an eCall standard for it, mainly from the point of view of an aftermarket device. So this is not something that would be fitted in the factory. This is something that is available for the large number of vehicles that are already on the roads of Europe. This follows closely the request that came from the European Parliament. They want very much eCall for powered two-wheeled vehicles. They want eCall for trucks. They want eCall for coaches and buses, and they also want eCall for agricultural vehicles. All of those are in there, every single one of them, and we'll deal with the activities. I'll give you a glimpse of them in a minute. We also, exactly as we did in Hero, Hero 2 and iHero, we look at standards for validation. So if we've got these devices, how do we know if they're going to work properly? How do we know that they can work correctly in a PSAP? And you've heard from both Tadas and Ciaran of the problems that we ran into when we first found this problem of the fake eCalls right back in the Hero project, right back in 2012. And we just thought, oh, well, so that's a bit of a problem. We're not really quite sure where it is. GSMA, as the Handset Association, couldn't tell us how many of these things were out there. And it wasn't till we actually started to get into live testing across all the member states that we really discovered that this was quite a significant problem. And then we're going to validate the achievements of the SAFE project across two sets of member states. The first ones, which are Cyprus and Slovenia, who are project partners, and then we've got a whole range of associate member states where we're going to do some more testing. So next slide, please, Christina. So why SAFE? Well, as I just touched on, 268 million vehicles and counting in Europe. In fact, there's probably a heck of more than that. Casualty figures in Europe, they're stuck. And in actual fact, they're going up. You can see some of these stats, and some of these have come from our colleagues in the Czech Republic, who did some really good work on why we needed aftermarket eCall standards. So eCall only applies to new types of cars and light trucks. The big worry, and if you've heard both Ciaran and Tadas talking about false eCalls or inappropriate eCalls, if you start moving to devices that you can plug into your vehicle or could be installed on your vehicle, currently there are no specifications. There is no unified specification or standard for aftermarket eCall. We already know that some aftermarket eCall devices that are out there have a dual function. They're used as a road inspection device. So if it finds a bump in the road, it'll send a message. If it has a crash, it'll send another message. The question is, we don't know what type of algorithm they're using, if any, and how accurate they are. So this is a real problem. And if you start to get these devices manufactured at low cost, high volume, then it's going to be really, really difficult for the PSAPs to manage. Could I have the next slide, please, Christina? So, in order to respond to this, Project SAFE had a couple of aims. So, first thing is, we want to define specifications and standards for aftermarket eCall. And we're working very closely with CEN 278, Working Group 15. So when we develop a specification, we immediately transfer that to CEN, and they then look at this and refine that down to make it a standard. So then that's adopted through the usual ballot process throughout Europe, and that becomes something that the developers have something to work to. I'm sure that I'm not the only person on this call that gets calls almost on a weekly basis from someone that's developing a really, really good idea. That says, Andy, I want to make eCall, but what does it look like? I need to make it to fit into a car I've got already. but I don't know what to do. Well, it's really difficult. You can guide them and say, well, look, go and look at the specifications that are out there already, but it doesn't put any criteria, any competence on the quality of the algorithm that's going to trigger an eCall. So this is going to be a problem we're trying to deal with. And the whole thing is to stop false and inappropriate eCalls reaching the PSAPs. We already know that there's quite a significant variant of aftermarket eCall systems that could use the single emergency number as an aftermarket device. I've got one sitting on my desk. It's a 12-volt USB plug-in. It has a profile in it. It's an eCall device, and you just plug it into your 12-volt receptor in your vehicle. Now, is that going to be good enough? Well, we're not really sure yet. We've got to test it. Could we be using apps? Again, another big problem. But we've got to look at all of these issues to ensure that every member state has some guidance as to how they want to develop and guide the deployment of aftermarket ecosystems in their member state and then overall through Europe. We know that financially there is a huge market for potentially for aftermarket devices, and at the top of that queue is the insurance industry. Prices are coming down by the day almost, and they're getting to a point where forget the black box in your car, we'll actually give you an eCall device, because whilst we can monitor your driving, the actual real costs come when you have a collision, when you crash, because at that point then the insurance company want to take control of your vehicle, your hospital, your treatment, the recovery of your vehicle, the repair of your vehicle. That is where eCall in a private environment may well go. Okay, can I have the next slide, please, Christina? So, because we're short on time, I'm just doing this as a snapshot of each of the activities. In total, there are 6 activities. One is just dealing with project management, and then the other 5 are separate projects in their own right, and then within each that there are, as you can see, for activity 2, there's 6 different projects, completely separate projects that are designed to all build towards these aims and objectives that I've just mentioned to you. So the first one is activity 2, and you can see on the screen if you're not dialed in. So first thing is, what does the market want? Who are the market? So we already know that the insurance industry are there. The motor part industry is very interested in this as well as road authorities and member states. Next key one is another one I know that Christina and EENA have done a lot of work with, eCall support over IMS. So this is next generation eCall. What's it going to look like? What are we going to transmit? How it's going to be received? What bearers are we going to use? And Anna, I know Anna Robnik is on the call, is leading this and doing some fantastic work in Slovenia. Next one, cost benefit analysis. There has not been a cost benefit analysis on eCall since 2014. We now have a team working in Romania who are providing a new cost benefit analysis for eCall now that it's implemented. Next one, security and privacy. And it's interesting listening to the problems that Ciaran has had. We already have a GDPR compliant analysis of eCall. So it deals specifically about managing the data, who can have access to data, and how you ensure that you comply with GDPR regulations. And the next part is the security part. When eCall moves to IMS, there is a whole different set of problems, because this is not a circuit switch, this is packet switch now. So there is a number of packets of data coming towards your PSAP, and that could be anything in there. How do we know what that data is. Who's it come from? Is it nasty? Is it good? We don't know. The next one is actually to do a generic deployment profile of eCall into a member state. So if a member state says, I am encouraging the deployment of aftermarket eCall devices, we will have a set of measures for a member state that can pick and choose as to how they could then go about encouraging the deployment of aftermarket eCall in that member state. And then the last one in activity 2 is the influence of retrofit on the requirements of the PSAP. So again, we're making sure that if eCall moves into an aftermarket environment, that the PSAP is always the most important place, because there's no point in having an eCall that can be triggered if you don't know what it is and you can't answer it. So could I have the next slide, please, Christina? Right. This is activity 3, and this is all about the definitions and the specifications, and these are then transferred directly to SEN 278 Working Group 15, and you can see every single vehicle type is covered in there. So every vehicle type, M1s, Ns, and Ls are all covered. I would draw your attention to the one which is slightly different, which is the specifications and requirements for the PSAP for new vehicle categories and technologies. This is all to do with eCall line fit for powered two-wheel vehicles. And this particular project is dealing directly with the PSAPs, and this is following on from iHero, where eCall for a powered two-wheel vehicle as a new vehicle was developed. But this was different. It didn't have a speaker. It didn't have a microphone. So there was this was just purely a machine talking to a machine. Following discussions with DG Move and DG Grow from the European Commission, we were commissioned to carry out some more work and to work on a one-to-one basis with PSAPs to find out exactly what they want. It's very difficult to put a speaker, a weatherproof speaker on a motorcycle, but not that difficult to put a microphone in. So at that point, a PSAP, if there was a trigger from a powered two-wheel machine, it can hear ambient noise at the crash site or at the trigger site. So again, this is really, really important. And then again, looking for next generation 112 eCall sensing and communication requirements. The whole rule book for eCall, once it moves to next generation, will be thrown out. There will be new possibilities. The question is, what do the emergency services, the emergency responders actually want, not what some smart marketing person thinks you want. And there are all sorts of discussions being had with that now. So if I could have the next slide, please. Okay, now conformity activities, we've followed these through from Hero, Hero 2, iHero, and we're now doing this in SAFE. These always follow the work that we've done for the specifications and the standards. How do we know that the conformity is what we want, and a test regime that will go with it? So for all of those test vehicles, you can see M1, N1, powered two-wheel vehicles, class L and coach and heavy goods vehicle, and class L in their own right. How can we test and be sure that those devices that are manufactured conform? How do we know that they will conform to the specifications and the standards? And that's being handled by specialist organizations. Can I have the next slide? Now, I mentioned right at the beginning that there were validation. Originally, when we set up SAFE, there was one activity of member state validation, but the European Commission and politics got in the way, so now we have two. They will both do exactly the same activities. They are both very similar to the activities we carried out in all of the Hero and iHero projects. Everything's the same, but it's just that because 2 countries actually receive funding and the remainder of the countries have said, look, actually, we want to be there because we realize aftermarket eCall is important to us, we've had to split it in 2. So we will be looking at in-vehicle systems for fit and suitability of use, accuracy, eCall activation, do we have manual or automatic activation, audio capabilities, audio tests, GNSS, previous positions, are we going to be able to put those in, callback to the units, clear down from the PSAPs, the VIN, and the VIN is a huge issue with aftermarket eCall, because if you get a digit wrong on a VIN, you could end up looking at a Volvo truck, when in actual fact you should be looking at a Citroen C2 or C3 vehicle. So this is really quite important, and there's a lot of discussion going on about whether actually aftermarket eCall will include any form of VIN. What's the installation going to look like? Who would be authorized to install? So all of these questions we will be looking at. So if I could just do the last, I think it's last but one slide. Last slide, please, Christina, because it has been a gallop through. So these are the countries that we are currently going to work with, and they've indicated they would like to work. So we've got Germany, we've got at least 10, I know it says 5 there, but there's 10 PSAPs that we will be working with. Czech Republic working in conjunction with German PSAPs, so for cross-border. France, because of the unique nature of the intermediate PSAP in France, dealing with both TPS and 112 eCall. Finland, so at that particular point, specifically to look at the interoperability with their GLONASS and aftermarket straying into their territory, would it work? Italy is working specifically with Activity 3 and the L category eCall that was developed in iHero. Portugal, again, we're very much looking forward to working with them. And Austria, we're hoping that they will work again with some more of the powered TwoWheel guys from the Austrian manufacturers. Could you just press the key again, because that's it, right. So this is an offer to any other PSAPs that are listening, and in fact anybody that's involved in eCall. In SAFE, just as in Hero 2 and iHero, we have associate partnerships. You can be part of the process. Unfortunately, I can't give you any money, but you can be part of the process. We would dearly, dearly love to have more member states involved. Involved in the testing, involved in the dialogue about what eCall for aftermarket would look like in a member state. So in order to do that, we have to come and speak to you. So that's my offer from me. I've just finished, Christina. I'm sorry I've taken so long, but that's the yellowy bits are where we're playing, which doesn't look too bad. So thank you very much for your time, everybody, and back to you, Christina.
Thank you, Andy, for this very interesting presentation. I think we have time for a few questions from both presenters. I see here a question from Irache. For Ciaran. Ciaran mentioned their suspicion that there may be car manufacturers retrofitting with pan-European eCall vehicles that were previously TPSP eCall. Is this something happening in other countries too? And I'm curious, have TPSP eCall increased or decreased in the last year compared to pan-European eCalls? Tadas has left. He had to run to another meeting.
I've got a view on that, Christina.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, there are more vehicle manufacturers who are looking at TPSP eCall, but what we have discovered in the last few months is there's now a third route opening up, which is good for the PSAPs. What a number of manufacturers are now opting for is this third route where they have eCall based on 112. So that's great. So it's a really simple eCall system. We know what it is, it will work. What they're tending to do is offer on the side of that a telematic service. So you'll get, as an example, one of these is Hyundai. They will now, on their new cars, they're offering 112 eCall, and then by the side of that, they're offering an app and also a connected part of the in-vehicle system that will offer telematic services to the side. So it's not TPS eCall, but it is additional data that they can have. They're particularly interested in insurance again. They're interested in concierge services, but this is new. We haven't seen this before, but the route that they seem to be going through is, can I do TPS eCall? Well, that's going to cost me quite a lot of money. Could I do 112 eCall? Yeah, I can do that, but I've got to do it anyway. But I'm not getting any return off that. So is there a third way? Yes, I can offer telematic services as well as 112 eCall.
Ciaran, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just on the question is about the possibility that, and it's a suspicion on my part, that I think that a particular manufacturer, we've seen a lot more calls from those vehicles since September, and that doesn't align with car sales in Ireland, and I'm trying to figure out why we see these suddenly. Now, there's only been 1 or 2 automatic activations, and most of them have been manual activations. So it's also possible that they have changed their software so that a manual activation is now easier. But if they were, coming back to the suspicion that they may have switched from TPS eCall to Pan-European eCall, if that were the case, we would not have seen the TPSP eCalls previously for misdials, because ECAS wouldn't have seen those calls in any case if they went to the TPSP, because the TPSP service will filter those calls and not connect them as they don't need an emergency service. So we wouldn't have seen those calls, those manual activated misdials from the TPSP previously. So I think the only way I can confirm or deny or actually find out why since September we're seeing a lot more from one manufacturer is I'm going to have to reach out to the manufacturer through the in-country distributors and say, have you made a change? What is going on? Why do I see these now and I didn't see them before? So yeah, it's not possible to sort of look at the stats for TPSP and figure it out from that. I'd be interested to note if any other countries have seen a change recently or in the last few months in the numbers and indeed the type of vehicles that have been sending Pan-European eCalls. Okay.
Perhaps they will send you an email, and we can also have more information. I will ask if I speak with other PSAPs about this. We have for the SAFE project, we have another question if there is a web page of the project to know more about it. Andy, do you have a website?
Yes, we do. Hold on a minute, and I'll just read it out to you. Whilst there was also a supplementary question on that as well, regarding Ford Sync and the Apple Watch. Here we go. So the website is allthews.safe, S-A-F-E 112.eu. So if I actually, hold on. There we go. There was another part of that question, just here, right, regarding Ford Sync. Are we looking at those? Yes, we are. And then there was a supplementary question about how to stop manufacturers of an app to start sending data and speech to 112. This is slightly to the side, but I sit on the UK government committee. In order to use a 112 connecting app in the UK, you have to be approved. And there we go. Thank you very much, Christina. But in order to do that, you have to go through a series of gateways, both with BT as the 112 operator and with all of the emergency services. And we've just started writing to Apple to go, look, you've introduced this in the country. This is not acceptable. You need to actually disable this in for UK specific until you have approved it. This is being discussed next week at the government committee I sit on. But there are future developments coming with the new Google phone that will have an eCall device in it. So also, when the Ford Sync unit first came out, Ford didn't handle it very well by their own admission, and they're actually banned in the Netherlands. They were sent a letter that said, if you sell Ford cars in the Netherlands, please do not enable Ford Sync in the initial incarnation, the Ford Sync for Europe 1. Please don't have this enabled. And they got very upset about it, but the government in the Netherlands took a decision that this wasn't conducive to the use of 112. And that's what we ended up. Of course, it's changed now because they were able to use, I think, the latest incarnation of Ford Sync.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we don't have a question for time for any more questions, sorry. And thank you again for the very good presentations. Also, thank you for attending this webinar. Don't hesitate to contact any of the presenters or myself if you have any questions or information to share. And we will send the presentation and the material through email to you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, Christina.
Have a good day. Bye.